All right. So, why are we here today? Why are we talking about sponsorship and why is it 2.0? This is a case study. It's kind of ridiculous to go shouting out that you helped people get through the 12 steps. In some way, some ego sense, how many people. Well, it is an exceptional number in my experience of being in 12-step rooms. I'm a 12-step member. Um, and I helped about 35 people ask me for help, and 30 plus are alive and accounted for and sponsoring other people, and sober, which is kind of a rare. Like that's based on my experience. I did not put numbers up like that earlier in my sobriety. The fact that that's happening today is a strange mix of things, which is why I want to do this thing for you. I want to show you what the case study is, what I'm doing, and how it's helping. And I think there's a million different applications that you guys can apply. Most people on here are parents. We all have leadership roles and positions, whether it's coaches or in business, wherever it may be. This is a transformation framework, plain and simple, kind of the OG transformation framework. I'm in the coaching world. I see a lot of transformation frameworks. There's nothing more effective and more sturdy and complete, really, in terms of helping a whole person create change that's meaningful in their life, to identify places where they're out of alignment with what they really want, to become aware that they're out of alignment with what they really want, and to start moving in the direction of what they really want. I mean, it seems simple enough, but almost nobody does it. The pain level has to be pretty high. So ironically, the place that you'd least likely look for a powerful framework for change, a place like the 12-step rooms and addiction, the kind of people that really just are really poorly understood by all of society. And even inside the rooms, I think we do a poor job of really understanding what it is that we're doing, and simplifying these complexities so that people can understand what's going on with themselves and the problems that they have, so that they know how to solve them. Okay. So that's the idea today, is we're going to bring some clarity. We're going to bring the 12 steps out of these, fringe places that are kind of ignored unconsciously, almost like rejected. Like, I don't want addiction. I don't want to know what the solution is. But everybody has an addiction. And since I've been working with business leaders who don't have like an alcohol or a drug addiction, I've found even more clearly that they're sometimes the most miserable people I've ever met. I thought drunks and addicts were the most stubborn, miserable people I've ever met, until I got into the business world. And these people are some of the most financially successful people that you can meet, and yet that does not solve the underlying misery. In fact, it really highlights that misery is there, and that this amount of money and this amount of success is actually not working. So this is a fulfillment training, not a success in achievement necessarily, but achievement, there's a science to that, but this is a success in fulfillment. Okay, so let's dig in there. So this is Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. Obviously this is about the 12th step. This is about helping somebody else. And this is I think just a brain scrambling quote. I've been fooled is ultimately one of the hardest things for people to talk about. I have been fooled. Fooled by what? Fooled by myself. Fooled by the ideas that exist in culture that I grabbed onto like everybody else. And combined with maybe a reaction to alcohol that's different than other people, I found myself at the bottom of the hole, and lucky to get out alive. So hoping to spread a little bit of this, and also we're gonna have a little fun, because actually, guys, that wasn't Bill Wilson that said that. That was Mark Twain. Yeah, so he was the one that came up with this, and I think that it's the thing that I love so much about the 12-step rooms is that there's just so much humor there, and that leads me into my next point here, guys, which is there's some choices that you have in being here today. Okay, obviously you don't even need to choose to be here, but you have chosen that. The first one is trusting versus testing. All this stuff, by the way, is up for grabs. If you're in a leadership position, or if you're trying to take somebody through the steps or understand what the steps are, these are things that I use every day. This framework that I'm about to introduce to you here is actually from a guy named Steve Chandler, who wrote a book called Crazy Good. This is a book, it's a short book, and he has these 15 distinctions or choices that he calls them that make your life crazy good. Not just like pretty good, but like crazy good. The difference between like the Monkees, which is pretty good, and the Beatles, which is like crazy good, you know. So the first one that I want to talk about with you here is trusting versus testing. I don't think you should trust anything that I have to say. Doesn't matter if I'm almost 8 years sober. Doesn't matter if I've taken 30 guys through the steps. Those are just footnotes to maybe draw some interest or something. But I would advise you to test these things. That's what people like to do. We don't like to just trust. We like to test. So that's what I encourage you to do. Don't trust what I'm saying. Test it. Second, I want you to ask yourself, are you here for information or transformation? There's going to be tons of information. Coming in for information is an amazing thing. We call it sometimes in the 12-step rooms osmosis. You find yourself in an AA meeting or something, or a 12-step meeting, and you're getting all this information, which is great because you don't have the information, but you're getting some information. You don't have understanding of why it is that you're drinking yourself to death, and you don't even really like drinking, except for you can't not drink. But you come in, you get some information, and you start to find everybody has a general positive stance towards you. They seem to understand you more than you understand yourself. They understand your problem. They know how to put it into simple terms that you can understand. So information is a valuable part. And I really want you to check in. Are you here for information, or are you here for something deeper? So my sense is if you've ever been to an AA meeting or a 12-step meeting as like or a person that you thought, God, I have to change that. And then you went on another 3 years doing the exact same thing, maybe even daily or weekly. And you're in that space of possibly shaming yourself. You might be ready for transformation. That's a choice that you would have to make. The third one is expectation versus agreement. Expectation is really like, there's a quote, expectation is the death of serenity. Expectation, to me, I think the world is filled with this, and it's why the world tends to be miserable. If you're in business and you make if you put an expectation on someone, well, you need to have that done by Friday. Probably it's not going to get done by Friday. I'm just going to take a wild guess. If you make an agreement with them, what would you need in order to have this done by Friday? What would you agree to? Then maybe they say, well, I need more support. I need you to give me another person to work with me. If I'm going to agree to get this done by Friday. If it's a two-way street, it becomes something more special. If somebody gives their word on something, I find that that's kind of, in terms of helping somebody through the steps, or me, myself, going through the steps, if it's an expectation of me, the great thing about becoming a drunk is that there was only one expectation for me. And that one expectation is that I drink. And that's it, which is great because other expectations in my life, I just rejected. Because here's what an expectation system does. Expectation is, if you complete the expectation, you get to feel neutral. If you fall short of the expectation, you get to feel terrible. So at best, you're just back to neutral. In an agreement, if you meet the agreement, it should be like a wild celebration. I didn't drink today. That's a wild celebration. I'm a person who drinks every single day, no matter what. Good day, bad day, mediocre day, I drink. And I made it a day without drinking. Today, I did not drink today. That ought to be wildly celebrated. So, the culture that exists within the 12-step community is not a culture that exists in the world. And so and we go there and we replenish ourselves within that culture so that we can go out into the world and bring that out into the world. This is a big one, agreement. Noun versus verb. There's so many people that say, oh, I can't do that because I'm not a joiner, or I'm not a people person. Well, those are nouns, where I think freedom really starts to happen when we get into the verbs. I would love to do that. Verbs dance and they play and they enjoy. Verbs are new actions. Okay. And so in the recovery community, it trumps all. Action trumps belief. Okay. Action, what you do, the thing that you do next trumps what you believe in your head. Okay. If you're in your head, you're dead. So I would suggest making a choice today about being a verb. Reacting versus creating. This is a mindset thing. We are programmed to react. And addiction is a state that exists when we are reacting to death. Once I have this magic elixir that makes me feel the best that I've ever felt, even though I know that I should be ashamed of even saying that out loud, it's the best I've ever felt, and I have to have more of it, or I think I'm not going to be able to survive here much longer. That's an unconscious choice that gets made again and again and again. An unconscious choice is called a reaction. Now, some reactions are really healthy for us, but so many of them around addiction are killing us. So to become the command, or become the captains of our ship, the person who is in control of, takes responsibility for my attention and my consciousness. There's nobody else in the world that can do that for me. It's a choice that I have to make. And even if I make the choice, it takes work. To become a creator that I'm here to become, the most fulfilled that I can be is when I'm a creator. To admit that I've created my life. Nobody held me down and poured alcohol down my throat and cocaine up my nose. I did those things. Okay. And so I created that life, but I did so unconsciously. So the idea now is I'm not going to hold myself in contempt for what I've done unconsciously, but now I get to show up and create something new. This is the best feeling that there is. And the fact that I'm even looking back for places where I may have been stuck in reaction shows that it's in the past and that I can make a new choice today. So repeating the same old choice is a form of insanity, right? That's one of the fun definitions of insanity, repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. When I become aware of the choice, I will often make the less painful choice if I can become aware of it. So stepping into creativity. Dreams versus systems. Dreams are great. It's a good place to start, but systems, like there's whatever your bank account number is right now, the exact amount that's in there, that is based on a system, a perfect system that creates that number for you today. So all of your dreams, they're usually, until they become a system, something in your calendar, they are never going to happen. It takes action to put those things into existence, and systems of thought and systems of action work together. Pleasing versus serving. I'll tell you, I used to hang out with some people that it pleased me greatly because they served me lots of alcohol and drugs when I came over to their place. And it did not serve me, but it pleased me greatly. And the people, who I spent time with who didn't, please me, did not give me alcohol and drugs. That was very displeasing to me, but it was also serving to me. So what we're here to do here today, guys, is we're here to serve. Service is leadership. You want to be a great leader? Be a great servant. These things are kind of ubiquitous in the culture of leadership. And, today, well, this is a leadership framework. Okay. So we're here to become servants. How do we do that? Well, there's a whole lot of stuff, whole lot of principles we got to start getting good at practicing. And so personality versus purpose is another one from this book from Steve Chandler, Crazy Good. Steve Chandler, by the way, was a guy that he just retired from the coaching world. He was one of the highest level business coaches out there. He called himself a success coach. But he became a coach after he got sober in his 30s. And he had an insane life behind the scenes, but he was able to stay sober and help millions of people. So this is a guy that obviously I love for many reasons. But personality versus purpose. Personality is a result. Okay. It's a vehicle. The purpose or the principle, the why, the principles that I practice create the personality. And so we're going to dig into this a bit today. Okay. So I can practice dishonesty and I can practice honesty. I got really good at dishonesty back in the day. practicing honesty was something that's like this fundamental thing. It's in the first step. We're going to get there, but that's a choice. And usually I'm aware of the choice of honesty versus dishonesty because it hurts when I'm dishonest. I can actually feel it physically manifesting in my body when I tell a lie. Sometimes the lie is already ready made. I got so good at it, my brain would just come up with these lies and they'd be halfway out of my mouth before I even realized I was responding. But it also built a life that was false. It would sacrifice the present moment for, or sorry, something in the future, a good life in the future for something in the present moment, a comfort in the present moment. The opposite is true for honesty. So it's a skill, it's a principle, but it's also a character trait, and it's a skill that I can practice. And even though it hurts in the moment, I know that it's right in the moment. It sacrifices the present moment to eliminate complexity and falseness for myself moving forward. So now all of a sudden, I don't have to keep track of all these lies. I get to just live by the truth as best I can. And it's a day by day action. Okay, and lastly, on this list, religion versus spirituality. That's not actually in this book from Steve Chandler, but religion versus spirituality is something that this is a core concept of what the 12 steps are, of what 12-step communities are, things like AA, NACA. There's sayings within those communities like, religion is for people who don't want to go to hell. Spirituality is for people who have already been there. I like that, but I think it kind of thumbs its nose a little contemptuously at religion. I think there's obviously some good things that religion has done, and it's a miracle that I can say that today because I used to be the opposite kind of person to have an opinion like that. What I understand about religion is when you dig into the definition of the word, the core root of religion is lig, as in ligament, relig, to bind to something. So relig is to bind back to something. So in my experience, this is my bold opinion, every human on this planet is religious. Now, I don't mean they're Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or any of that kind of thing necessarily. Those are big box religions. Here are our set of assumptions and beliefs about the nature of reality, and here's a set of actions that you ought follow in order to participate in this reality that we're telling you, essentially, that we have had experience with. Religion is a set of actions that you take to get to a spiritual experience. Okay, and so Christianity has that coded out. Judaism, Islam, they all have, here's the set of actions that you take. Now, there's a bunch of argument over that. There's different sects. There's a million different sects in Christianity. There's splits around all those things about arguing over, do we include this action or not include this action? Do we use this word or do we use that word? Okay. But what I understand is my religion used to be alcoholism. Like Catholics practice Catholicism, an alcoholic would practice alcoholism. Okay. So my religion was a set of actions, which was, it was kind of like a cult in a lot of ways, alcoholism. It wanted all my money. It wanted me to have a lower impact job so I could spend more time in the church. It wanted me to have, distant relationships from my family and anybody who cared about me, so it could have me all to itself. It was the center of my entire life. It was like I went to church at the end. I went to church every day. I probably went to church nearly 1,000 days in a row at the end. I was very devout. And I was on my knees, so, the actions that I took was I would do whatever it took to get enough money. I tried to stay honest, but I wasn't always honest. And I lowered my own standards in order to get the money that I needed, in order to procure the alcohol and weed. Those are my two big ones, so that I could get the feeling that I wanted to feel, which was, it was the best feeling I ever had, or it mimicked the best feelings I ever had, but I didn't have to like win a national championship in order to feel that feeling. I could just like get really drunk, and all of a sudden it felt like I accomplished a season's worth of goals just right in that one night, and the next morning it felt very similar because I usually would get drunk after national championships too. So I would feel hungover, and it helped me make friends when I was too awkward and afraid to go outside of my my inhibitive walls. It helped me lower those walls so I could go out and make friends. It helped me, as soon as I learned to drink, I learned to get laid. These things really went hand in hand. So it all points to something. Okay. And so that the spirituality of alcohol, they call it a spirit. This is not to be, um, this is a powerful thing to contend with. And this is a false religion versus a true religion thing. What I know is alcohol clearly was a false religion. It was not my best friend, but it did really actually feel like a best friend. I thought it was the end of my life when I was leaving alcohol. But of course, life hadn't even begun yet. The same courage that it would give me early on in my drinking career to like go talk to the girl, at the end, it was like I didn't even want to leave my apartment for fear of getting picked up by the cops because I couldn't even speak. I was so drunk. It was just the only good feeling that I had at the end. And how did a guy like me get stuck into all this? Well, I'm not alone. Okay, so one more enlightened choice here is that we actually have a oh, sorry. This is my first time using this presentation software. Okay, so I have a gift for you at the end of the presentation. If you stay tuned the whole way through, I know it's a lot of me talking right now. When we get to the Q&A, I will drop it in there then. Okay, so about 30 minutes from now, you will have a gift if you hang in there. Okay, great job, everybody. So one of the terms I want to define here first is spiritual. When people say the spirit of something, I don't think it needs to be some woo-woo thing or some, the church organ starts playing and you have this feeling that like, God is with you. Spirit also means essence and truth, principle and purpose. When people, speak at a funeral about somebody's life, they'll talk about the principles they live by, the purpose of their lives. We don't always know what the spirit of our lives is in the middle of it. Traits and results of principles are also talked about. Like, oh, he was the funniest guy. He just always had an off-color joke to tell. That's a trait, right? It's a practicable skill over time. They'll talk about your actions, your skill. He was capable of great things, and sometimes he even did those things. They also talk about, this is an actual, I really like this paradigm here of priority is just another way to say strategy or philosophy. So if somebody, in a leadership role is saying, what's our strategy here? It just means, what are you prioritizing? At the end of life, they might say he prioritized people over things, or he prioritized things over people. So what's your philosophy? And then, of course, when people talk about spirituality or spirit, there's a sense of the things that I'm not conscious of. And sometimes I'm like kind of quasi conscious of those things, but it's also an attitude or an energy. I just have a good vibe with this person. So this term spiritual has been, I don't know, it's taken a beating, as has religion and religious. But these are things that they don't, to understand the true meaning of them might give us some power. And that's the whole point, is I want power. That's why I'm here today. I'm here for clarity. I'm here for power. And apparently the greatest power I've ever felt, and I would challenge everybody to kind of go back through your life for a moment here. When we say spiritual, there's also a sense of oneness or unity. Like I'm part of, like literally, you can't just delete my pinky finger from existence, because the entire universe, going back as long as the universe has existed, created my pinky, and it's part and parcel. The atoms in my pinky were used a lot of other places before they were used in my pinky. So you can't just delete any part of me without deleting the entire system that created it. That's oneness. And that's oneness at a material level. So if it's at the material level, does it also match in any kind of non-form? Form versus formless. Unity, feeling a part of, connectedness. They say there's a saying in the rooms, addiction is the opposite of addiction is connection. So I like the word intimacy, and no, intimacy does not mean sex, although sometimes you can have sex that includes intimacy. The whole damn thing that we're doing here today, folks, is intimacy. I hate to drop this on you now. That's what life is. That's what this whole training is. It's a training in intimacy. Intimacy is, whoops, sorry, I lost there we go. Intimacy is belonging. I'm a part of a whole. I have a place in this world. These were beliefs that I did not have many experiences like this outside of maybe sports or a 4.0, GPA in my early life. Being around my family, I could feel a sense of belonging. But as soon as I left the house, it was hard to forge that. Sometimes in teams, but not usually. But it means being truly seen, heard, felt, and understood. So when a new person walks into the room and I've done the work and I have an understanding of myself now, and I know that, and this person's beating themselves up, I know that they don't need to beat themselves up. And that's actually part of the problem. They're going to drink if they keep beating themselves up, as we always do. If I can understand that and hold some space for them, some non-judgmental space, they might come back. They might stick around. They might want to do this thing. And that's a huge piece of this whole sponsorship ordeal, is creating some space, doing the work yourself so that you are in a space of intimacy yourself, so that you can then attract those without it, like a moth to the flame. So this is a guy named Chris Williamson. He's got one of the top podcasts out there these days called Modern Wisdom, and he's got a beautiful British accent. I highly recommend it to anybody. The persona is incapable of receiving love. It can only receive praise. This one stopped me in my tracks, because this is the persona, the personality. This is a thing that's totally changeable, and yet we think that's who we are. It's incapable of receiving love. It can only receive praise. So I like this thing up above that leads into this, that he says spiritually, the stakes are raised even higher. If you spend your days playing a persona and hiding who you truly are, you will end up at a place in life not only that you don't want to be, but that you didn't even mean to get to. Is that universal? In my experience, it is. That's everybody in 12-step rooms dying of addiction, and that's everybody I've ever met if I have a deep conversation with them. There's some place in their life where they are at a place where they didn't mean to get to. They didn't even want to go there, but it was part of the persona. So how do we break through? I was going to read this really beautiful thing about that the surfer wrote about this moment at the top of the waves. I'm not going to read it because it's kind of long and I want to stay on time here. But this moment on top of the wave, I forget what they call it, but it's when you mistime the wave, and when you're doing the big waves, when you're playing in the big wave game, this is the place where you eat it in such a way that you could die. It's right at the top of the wave, and when you go down here, the wave comes crashing over top of you. So if you mistime it, basically if you hesitate, to either, if you wait too long to get up, or because there's an option right there when the wave's coming at you, that you're either going to get up and pop right up and hit the wave, or you're going to dive underneath the wave and let it pass over top of you, kind of thing. And if you hesitate, this is the result. So there's kind of like the idea that this guy talks about is, am I going to surrender or am I going to struggle? I love this concept of like the first half of the steps. I like chunking down these 12 steps into smaller chunks, more actionable chunks that everybody can understand. Everybody struggles. And when we surrender to the struggle, that, hey, you know what? I'm struggling here, and I never have a moment where I don't struggle in this situation. I'm going to surrender that I struggle all the time in this situation, and just accept for a moment. I'm just acknowledging and becoming aware that I'm always struggling in this one situation. Maybe it's my finances. Maybe it's my relationships. Maybe I keep dating the same person. I keep getting the same job, and and as soon as I get it, I'm like, damn it, I did it again. I got another job that I don't love. not even like, it just pays the bills, and not even that, maybe. So the whole thing is about intimacy, and this is an invite to surrender to intimacy. Okay, so we're going to go in reverse here and look at 12 step. The 12 step talks is the step that, encourages people to go sponsor. We live in 10, 11, and 12. Once you do 1 through 9 and you understand what the skills are of 1 through 9, you can repeat them daily in 10, 11, and 12. So it's not 12 things that you're doing every day. I have it memorized, but I'm a freak, right? So it's 3 things. Anybody can remember 3 things. So the most important thing, perhaps, in my opinion, the thing that helps me to get 30 people through the steps is in the very first conversation with them. I talk about, okay, well, in 6 to 12 weeks, you'll be raising your hand to sponsor somebody else. We're going to go through the steps effectively, but as quickly as we can, just so you get an understanding, a working understanding of the actions behind the steps. And it's enough time to practice them to notice that there's going to be a change that starts occurring when you're practicing these principles that you're probably not been practicing. You've probably been practicing the opposite principles. So 12 steps of service is about, once I practice these principles, practice these steps, I'm going to have a new sense of intimacy with myself. Recovery is about recovering the sense of intimacy with ourselves, with our creator, with others, to be able to show up. I have a sense of belonging before I even show up today. And I do these actions of, these spiritual actions so that I feel a sense of belonging and understanding with myself. I sit down with myself every day to understand what's going on for me today in my mental life, in my physical life, in my emotional life. It's different every day. So I slow down and I actually take some time to do that. I recover a sense of intimacy with myself. When I have that sense of intimacy, the middle steps are about giving it. What do I do when I have that sense of intimacy? When I'm at my best, I really start to live. It's when alcohol was first working for me. What did it help me do? It helped me connect. It helped me be connected with others. It helped me have courage to do the things that I wanted to do in my career. To tell my boss what I really wanted to say to him, and say, hey, I want that promotion. Hey, I need to make more money. This is not healthy for me. It actually helped me for a time before it turned. Okay. It gave me a sense of intimacy and understanding that I could actually go out there in the world, but it wasn't authentic. It was a chemical sense of intimacy. Practicing these principles gives you an authentic sense of intimacy. Okay. And so when you have the authentic sense of intimacy, you're able to live a life that you actually would love to live. And that's like steps 6 through 9. And so once you're doing that regularly, 10 is you just repeat those couple things. 11 is the effect produced by that is that you have a spiritual awakening. If you look here, so having had a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. So it's the result. That's what the whole point is. It's the result. And once I have that result, if I want to increase the strength of that result, I need to give it away. Okay, so we would naturally carry this message to those who suffer. Like the Buddha, the famous story about the Buddha is he achieved nirvana. And then he could have stayed there. And instead of staying there, he came back to show the next guy. Okay, the idea of Jesus. He didn't have to come into this world. It's God, right? It's omnipotent power. He didn't have to come into this world. But he came into this world to take on all the suffering, to take on all the pain, so that we didn't have to suffer. It's not that we won't suffer, it's that we don't have to suffer, right? So universally across religions, these things are about helping the next person receive the sense of intimacy and wholeness, that we come into this world actually part of another human being. Okay, we come fully into this world in intimacy. So then we practice these principles, and these principles are, again, they're action, skills, and traits. If I have an honesty deficiency, I can practice honesty. And I can get better at it, and it's going to really hurt, and it's going to really suck, and it's going to screw me up for a little while, but then it's going to make things right because it's going to kill a lot of false stuff in my life. So I just love to, again, with the defining these words, service equals leadership. Leadership equals influence. Influence is love in action at its best. Being the living embodiment of love, like be the verb. So just to do a quick overview here, these are the 12 steps and the principles that I found out there in the universe. I did a podcast a couple years ago called A Mile High and About to Die, where I went into more details on the principles. I learned a lot nobody watched it basically, but I learned a lot as a result of spending 12 hours talking about these principles. My sister Kate, who's on here, she watched most of them, I think. God bless her. So honesty and acceptance. I just want to kind of stick to the principles here for a moment. Hope is the next one that occurs, then faith, then courage, then integrity, then willingness. these are the first, to me, these are the steps that we take too long to get through. How I moved 30 guys through this deal is I help them get a taste of all of these first 6 right away. Like in the first time that we talk and setting it, an appointment to speak with them, they have an actual game plan of what to do for these first 6 steps. Okay. 7 is humility, which I think, 7 and 8 are really like these turning point, belonging love, becoming love. And justice, 8 and 9 are the amends steps. When you take these actions, you get a new result and you get a new feeling of what it is to, when you make an amends, it's a lot. That's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, is to make an amends, to go and say, hey, to so-and-so, I am a completely insane person, or I was acting completely insane. And while I was acting insane, I hurt you, and I'm doing some work to not be insane in that way. And I'm here to tell you, I think I harmed you, and here's the nature of the harm. And if you can go and do that, is there anything else that I did? Is there, what can I do to make it right? Not an I'm sorry, but I was completely out of line. I harmed you. I'm here to make restitution if possible. And what would that look like for you? This is the work of forgiveness. This is the work of no longer carrying burdens around which keep us small and sick. That's justice. To be truly free. Okay. Perseverance is 10. It just means repeating. Repeating gives you the grit, gives you the perseverance, gives you the resilience. Okay. Spirituality, is you have this sense of you're having this spiritual awakening sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. When I'm sitting in meditation, I'm receiving as best as I can, as clearly as I possibly can, receiving what a loving God would actually want me to do today, the attitude that God would want me to live in. An attitude probably not of like hatred and judgment, but probably of like love and service, forgiveness of self and other, and what happens as the result? Well, it's the bet. I'm a guy that really loves to be drunk and high. And I can tell you, this is a better feeling. Helping other people is the strongest sense of goodness that I've ever felt. Okay. Or I'm not a saint. I just graduated to a better set of neurochemicals. All right. So just to dig in on step 1 and kind of how I work it, I really like to go off of the principles. And so, the way I'll talk about it like this. When I share in a meeting and I'm approached after the meeting, I try to share in the back half of the meeting after I've heard some of the new people. Okay. So this is, if you're trying to pick up sponsees, I'm talking to you. Obviously, this is also just for anybody curious about how the process works. Okay. I tend to speak towards the end of the meeting so I can hear what everybody else is going through, so that I'm not going to cross talk, but that I can cover general themes which have been covered. I might tell a story might come to mind based on something somebody said if they're going through something. If I've been through something similar, I might tell that story based on how I'm feeling God is guiding me, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So I get into a relationship with honesty and acceptance, and I demonstrate that I'm being honest based on where I'm at today. I have to work these things constantly. So I show up and I demonstrate in a share that I've been there. I know what it's like to nearly drink yourself to death, and really kind of wish for the end in a way, if only you wouldn't have to hurt all the people that cared about you. If that was an option to get out of this thing without hurting people, I would have taken that option perhaps, but it turns out I don't think you can outrun this stuff. I've had some spiritual experiences, kind of a near death experience. And there was something on the other side, and it was loving, but I was also stuck in a place that seemed a lot like purgatory. And I'm not at that point in my life, I was the furthest thing from a churchgoer, a believer, and any kinds of that stuff. But I felt like I was kind of trapped in a subway station with no trains coming, with a higher being that felt everything that I was feeling non-judgmentally, and it wept with me. And it carried my burden with me. completely non-judgmentally. And it would have waited there with me for eternity, I believe. I wouldn't have been alone, but no trains were coming. And, you know, and that's not even the craziest thing that happened in my drinking days in terms of my step one. The craziest thing is that I drank the next night. And the rationale for that was that, well, I won't do any Molly ever again. Because the night that I nearly died I was mixing a lot of alcohol with some powders. So that was my rationale. That's insanity. So I had no ability to be fully honest. I was not in an environment of honesty. I was not subjected to honesty regularly. I just had to outrun it internally. So I didn't have a relationship with the truth because I didn't have a relationship with honesty. The truth is not something I possess. It's something that if I build a relationship with it, it will help me. It will set me free, but first it's going to F me up, and that's why I did not bite off truth at first. Acceptance is a relationship with love. And so an important point here is that love plus truth equals intimacy. Okay, so again, I throw this word around, and this is my opinion about what these principles really mean. But it means that love is with you now, wherever you are. And the hard work of doing the honesty work, the truth work, is that I have to locate exactly where I am by admitting, you know what? I am completely falling short. I claim that I'm on top of a mountaintop somewhere, like living the best life, but actually, see that crevasse at the bottom of the valley where the flames are coming out? Like that's where I'm at. And I'm all alone and I'm screaming and I'm hurting and I'm dying. And just talking about that allows love to reach me. The strange thing. So as soon as I start talking it out, love hits me all of a sudden. So that's intimacy. So the question I like to ask here is, so when somebody approaches me at the end of this meeting, I will say, okay, I'll get out my phone. And because I get asked regularly, I do it over the phone in the morning. I do it in the morning because it's the best feeling. It's like day drinking. If given the option to have a few cocktails first thing in the morning, I would have loved to do that. I didn't do it very often. I would have loved to. So starting my day off with the best buzz that I can get is usually when I'm trying to help somebody else. Not that they're actually getting help, but just that I showed up to try. That feeling is amazing. So I have these phone calls. I do a 1-hour phone call first thing in the morning, 7, 8, 9 a.m. right in there. Sometimes I do 2 or 3, and depending on how many people are asking me. And so I just get out my phone and I pick a spot and I go, can you do Wednesday at 8 a.m.? And if they don't, I find the time that they can do. And then I say, great, I'll text you the night before to confirm, and I'll call you at 8 a.m. And if I'm 5 minutes late, I will apologize up and down because I don't want to waste your time or disrespect you. And this is coming from a guy that didn't answer his phone for the first couple of years of sponsorship, to be very honest with you. And people drank again. And there's an idea of quality of sponsorship here that I was not a good sponsor. And now I've created a way to, based on how my life works, that I can actually show up and help these people and I can feel great. And the funny thing is, again, these guys are staying sober. And 6 to 12 weeks into it, they're raising their hand to sponsor. They're doing all their step work. They're meditating right off the bat. And so, and that's kind of what I'll do is I'll give them a general overview, which sounds like this. Look, the 12 steps, everybody who's ever had success in any area of their life already knows the 12 steps. They just don't know that you could break them into these 12. And so what that is you get into a spirit of, you're usually naturally good at something. When you're naturally good at something, if you have a setback, do you let it keep you out of the game? No, you investigate. Okay, what went wrong? This went wrong. Okay, cool. I'm going to make a new choice next time. Cool. And then you go back to it and then you iterate and you have some more time at it and you start to succeed. And you keep going back and you get those good feelings. You feel a sense of belonging in that one area. Most people I've met have had at least one area that they've been highly successful in some way. Even if it's literally just getting drugs and alcohol, like I was able to do that every day for 2,000 days for the last 6 years of my recovery, even though I had no income. I figured out a way. That to me that's leadership. And I want you on my team, you know? So, I like to give an overview of just to say, you already know what this is. I'm just going to translate it with you so you know exactly how you've been successful so you can repeat it everywhere else in your life. So specifically, we just want to get full awareness on how am I getting my own way with alcohol? So what's your DOC? That's your doc. It's your drug of choice. Mine was alcohol and weed. Cool. Is that the best you'd ever felt? Yeah, basically. Or yeah, or I'd date, and sometimes I'd have like these great moments with the gals I'd date. But over time, this was just more efficient. Did it make you feel like you belonged? Like if you take a sip of this stuff and you feel a sense of belonging, I'm sorry, folks, like shame goes out the window. Shame is actually the situation where your brain starts shutting down from too much arousal, too much stress, you could say, too much sensory input. My experience with alcoholics and addicts is that we tend to be very sensitive, and actually like sound and light sensitive, even like sensitive beings. So you take a drink to calm your brain down. When your brain calms down, you're able to start thinking clearly and making decisions. You feel a sense of integrity and wholeness again. These are some of the principles, by the way, of these steps. Okay, so a sense of belonging means I'm whole. I'm okay. I belong. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it through this. That's the feeling of alcohol and drugs, or being a workaholic and eliminating other areas of your life because, going to the party and being, oh, I have to take this work call, or, oh, I need to work while I'm laying in bed at night. So I don't have the relation, I'm a little strained in my relationship. I'd rather not spend time working on intimacy in my relationship because I feel a sense of intimacy every time I'm on this phone doing emails to my clients. Oh, I feel a sense of identity and belonging. I think a lot of us can relate to this stuff if we go deeper. So is this the most efficient way you've ever gotten that feeling? So these are the conversations that I'll have once I actually call the guy, and I call him. And a lot of people might argue about this, but again, I see a lot of people. This is a way that I've been able. It's something I learned in my sales career. If I want to guarantee a sale, what are all the things that I want to do? If I want to screw a sale up, what do I have to do? Let them call me? Great. I'll do that, and I got some free good feelings for a long time in trying to sponsor people by giving them the option to call me, by giving them my phone number and not getting theirs at the exact same moment. What I found is if somebody's at a meeting, even their first time, but most certainly by their second time, they're ready to do the steps. They're ready for the transformation. They usually just, the crime that happens in the 12-step rooms is we don't approach those people and say, hey, so you're here. What do you think? You want to go for it? Yeah, I can get you through the steps in 6 to 12 weeks. I mean, it's really more like 12, sometimes a little longer, but the long-term solution for you staying sober is you learn a framework that you can then go teach somebody else, and you just keep teaching them. And in the meantime, you will become an amazing leader in your life, and you'll start doing things and being the person that you've always wanted to be, and through many iterations, you'll just get really good at that. It's leadership. It's a pure leadership framework. Is that something you'd like to do? And, these guys have been in hell and in isolation, solitary confinement in their head for years or months. And they're a little awkward about it, but they want it, is my experience. So the assumptive close is what you'd call that in sales. I'm assuming that if you're here, you want to do this thing. You stood in line with your clipboard filled out, and you can't afford the entrance fee, but let's figure out a way to get you in. Like, is this what you want? Yeah, it's a sacrifice. You don't know what's going to happen once you go through those gates. You're going to change. There's defects that you might love, defects of character that you might be in love with. And those things might have to fall behind, but unfortunately, the good stuff doesn't ever get left behind in my experience. So in the first conversation, I like to move them through steps 1 through 6 and just give them a taste of it. Okay. So I ask these questions, the drug of choice question. We go into step 2, just to identify, is this the best feeling you've ever had? Step 2 is about hope. Brene Brown is a psychologist. So she's studying the biology of the brain, of the human being. Biologically, we are target-based beings. we like to have a target to aim at, a goal. For us to be happy or fulfilled, we need to have a goal, a path to that goal, and agency to move down that path. She calls that emotion hope. The emotion of hope is the opposite of like depression and sadness. Sadness is no options, or I'm on a path that I don't have a goal. I don't know what path I'm on. That if I don't know what goal I have, that means I don't know what path I'm on. If I don't, or if I have a goal, but I don't have a clear path to that goal, then I'm going to feel constrained. And if I have the path, but I don't have the agency, if it requires a pogo stick and I only have, my 2 feet, then I'm not going to make it down the path. I got to get a pogo stick. Well, am I one of those unfortunate people that everybody else has a pogo stick, but I don't? Well, so we need to learn what the actions are. Agency is, what are the actions that are required to move down this path? All right. So hope is born when you realize that there's a whole other path here. There's a path with a goal, and the goal is intimacy. I want to feel that sense that alcohol made me feel, that drugs made me feel, or whatever my drug of choice, that sex with many different partners made me feel, that being a workaholic makes me feel. I want to experience it in some new ways. That sounds incredible to me. Okay. So, so I talk about, what's your path been? What has your religion been around your higher power, your drug of choice, the best power, the most power you've ever felt? What has your religion been around that? Have you sacrificed everything for it? And it's still not working. You're getting diminishing results. Great. That sounds like insanity. So when you're feeling hopeless, we often go back to our higher power for a moment of clarity, a boost. But then if it ends up over time being a downward spiral, and it's not solving your misery, in fact, it's making that spiritual misery worse, that misery of being worse, then you have what we might call the spiritual malady, this sickness spiritually, that you're not on the path that you want to be on, plain and simple. So just kind of flying through 3 and 4, this is where I just kind of say, are you willing to do a third step prayer? Third step prayer is roughly turning your life and your mind, your emotions, and your actions over to the care of a new higher power, not of alcohol and drugs, whatever your drug of choice was, but something that, like love, or, you're going to these meetings, GOD is a group of drunks, or gift of desperation. Would you like to have a new life? Is that something that you want? They'll probably say yes. Yeah, I'm willing to do that. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm willing to say a prayer each morning. Okay, God, an altar call, as they would call in the Christian church. Do you give yourself over to Jesus Christ? Do you give yourself to this higher power that you get to make up the higher power, to be honest? And if it is really loving, it's going to show up, is the idea, right? So where have I been putting my faith? And would I now choose to make an assumption that maybe I've had the wrong assumptions? A belief is just an assumption. It's just a thought that gets repeated without questioning. We assume that it's the truth. What if some of my thinking is not true? What if some of these repeated thoughts that go way back actually aren't true at all? What if I pretended that some other things were true? Like there was a loving higher power, that we were nested inside of love, and we just forget that we're there. We have intimacy access all the time, but it's like the fish swimming in the fishbowl. They don't know what water is. And so what I'll often do with that is just say, if you don't want to say the prayer, I didn't really believe in God when I got here, but if you don't want to say the prayer, just put it in your own words, and then we get right into the work. And so I have a resource on my website. If you go to zachbloom.com/resources, you'll see the truth sheet, and it's an investigation breakdown. I can use, it's one piece of paper per relationship, and I move through from left to right. Where have I'm going to investigate, and I don't want to investigate, but I want to investigate where am I getting in my own way? And I want to do like a little mini mock trial of this person. It's a trial. They are, I'm going to throw the book at them, and I'm not going to make apologies about it. I'm not going to be like, but they mean well. I'm going to be like, no, they made fun of me. They stole from me. They, whatever it was, I'm going to make a list of that, just bullet points. And then I'm going to look at how deeply it affected me and really take into account, like, there's 7 areas of my life here. It affected a lot of these areas, maybe all of them, probably all of them. Just even thinking about this person is like a threat to me, which is I'm going to get into a defensive position and have a crappier day so that this person doesn't hurt me, so they don't hurt, threaten, or interfere with me. And so there might be some false thinking in there, but I have to get it all out on paper so that part of me that has the complaint gets heard. This is intimacy. Hearing that part of me that has the complaint. And then after taking a full accounting of what they did and the damage it caused me, then I look at myself and I use the same intensity, if you will, of now I'm throwing the book at me. Where have I been selfish? Where have I been dishonest? Where have I been resentful or held unforgiveness, I like to say? And where have I been afraid? And those questions are the core of what a 10th step is. Those questions will set you free. And it's the unconscious decisions that we've been making, but we don't want to know where we're being selfish, because if I know, then I might be able to see that somebody else knows. And if somebody else knows, then I might get, omega'd or I might get beta'd out of the tribe. I'm no longer part of the tribe because they see how selfish I've been. So like we usually are programmed to say, I don't want to know what this information is. And alcohol and drugs help mute out the feeling of how selfish I've been, how dishonest I've been, how much unforgiveness I have held for myself and others, and how afraid I've been. Alcohol and drugs numbs all that stuff. That's all this deep spiritual pain. If I want intimacy with myself, if I want intimacy with others, I have to look at the blockages in my way. And it's my selfishness, my dishonesty, my unforgiveness, and my fear. These 4 core areas. And so when I share that with another person, a person that I can either assassinate afterwards, real quickly, or pay money so that they, don't divulge that information anywhere, I get this new sense. When I share it with somebody else, now I know it too. That's usually my experiences. I don't know it until I actually have to share it with somebody else. So that's the first 5 steps, and I'll leave you with this because I want to get into Q&A. Is the 6th step is a meditation. Meditation, there's many different ways to practice it. It's called contemplative prayer in some, Christian circles. It's a way for me I close my eyes. I do it at least 20 minutes a day. Sometimes I aim at 40 every day, but I also have an infant that you may hear in the house, and a 2.5-year-old. So, and a business that's all over the place. So, but I do it first thing in the morning, so I understand where I'm at mentally and emotionally and even physically. I get intimacy with myself right away, and I ask God, which is a word that I'm comfortable using now with my own worldview. I ask God to direct my thinking and show me. At times, I'll do a 10th step in my meditation. Where have I been selfish in my business? Where have I been dishonest in my marriage? Or I'll say in my marriage, where have I been selfish, dishonest, holding unforgiveness, afraid? In my friend relationship with so-and-so, in my finances, and so if there's a part of my life that's not going well, and there's always some part of my life that's not going well, to be honest, guys. This is the craziest thing. I don't know if it's God answering me, but I get an intuitive sense of exactly what's going on. And it's information that was there that was not accessed. So my conscious mind is like the search function in Google, and my unconscious is everything that I've ever done. And it's got its own mind in a way. It has the answers if I ask the right questions, or maybe more like ChatGPT or something, right? Like it gives me great results if I'm telling it what to look for. And so that is the core of what 10, 11, and 12 are. I try to live in 11, because I want to be showing up in intimacy right now and have a spiritual experience. Another way to say intimacy is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. To understand the true spirit of Zach's life as he's in his life, not after his death, but like, what is my life about today? What is God putting in front of me today? And what attitude can I show up in to serve and have fun and meet people with love and joy and humility and honesty and integrity? So there's principles behind all these steps. Okay. And so, I will show this one more thing here. I also, because I'm a life coach that has an obsessive mind, I turned all of these also into I statements, I words. So intimacy is, to recover my sense of intimacy, that I was born into this, that I grew inside my mother's womb, not even needing anything, not even needing to speak yet because it was all taken care of for me. Intimacy comes, through addressing the insanity that I have going on in my life. Where am I making a decision again and again and again that is yielding us the result that I don't want? The incentive, which is, the payoff for that insanity. I get drunk. It feels great, you know. Um, the inspiration that I have been, receiving as I feel inspired when I'm drinking, right? That's part of the incentive, but also it springs me forth to action. Inspiration is a turning point to action. If I want real intimacy, I want to start doing the math on these things, and then I start to do an inquiry and I get into integrity. I start to go, integrity is another word for wholeness. I'm whole right now, whole minded. And I'm also, if God is with me, then I'm whole. With this system of me and God, I am whole and I am one with God. God is here with me now, that kind of stuff. All right. And so, the next phase I call impact, which is, what has my impact been? Is it not so good? Yeah, that's what amends are for. I have interest to pay off. I've been making bad investments. I've been doing the next wrong thing instead of the next right thing, based on an identity that I thought I had, and a personality that was just a construct of a survival mechanism. But I can change my personality if I change the principles that I practice. I get a renewed sense of intuition when I practice 1 through 5. Once I have intimacy, I get an intuition about what I really want to do today, what I really want to do with my life. When I practice this thousands of days in a row at this point, this whole new life starts. Life didn't end when I stopped drinking. It hadn't even begun yet. And then finally, the final three here is just, I keep it about, insight, inspiration, and influence. Insight is a repeating of intimacy and impact, which is, I meditate and I'll journal and I'll make phone calls and text people in the morning. I get a sense of inspiration from that. I'm inspired as opposed to motivated by some external force. I'm inspired. The spirit within is telling me what to do in a way. My relationship with the truth is strong enough that the truth of who I could be starts to just come out. I get great ideas. I go for it for some reason. And then influence is, how do I help this next person? So, that's the idea of what this conversation is about, is, enrolling that person, just what I said right there, enrolling them in these practices. And in that first conversation, while I'm getting their phone number and signing them up, I will say, anytime that you're meditating and doing a third step prayer, giving yourself over in a way to some higher power that's going to take care of you and keep you sober, anytime you're doing something like that, you're practicing steps 1 through 6. Just so they understand, the 12 steps is something, it's action based. You do, and it's a power move type of thing. Once you learn how to do an amends, if you're practicing an amends, probably you meditated in the morning before you went and made the amends, probably praying throughout the whole day. You're practicing all these principles and you're probably going to have a ton of success. And there's not a person on this planet, agnostic or atheist or anything else, that doesn't practice some set of, those essential principles. They practice those principles and they get those results. And so I'm open-minded about what the thing is. I have a history of mental illness, right? So I can't exactly trust everything that's going on, but there's one reality to me, and it's, God is real. God's right here. God is love. And when I let that love connect with me, those seeds of truth of who I could be sprout, and I start to bloom and blossom. Hey, it's my last name. Okay. So, that's the 12 steps, and that's sponsorship. I'd like to kick it over now for questions. Oh, sorry. I got a present for you, right? So this is my present to you guys. This is another enlightened choice, I hope. Okay. So because you showed up and you did this thing, I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Until midnight tomorrow. So I'm doing a Find Your Why mastermind in January, on Tuesdays in January, on the 9th, 16th, and 23rd. At 7:30 Mountain Standard Time. There's 75-minute sessions. And at the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of what your why is. Your why is your main purpose for being, and it will help you make decisions and have ultimate clarity so that you actually know what you even want to do in your day-to-day. Like, what are you doing on Monday, Monday morning? Well, if you know your why, you know exactly what you're doing on Monday morning. And your priority is your strategy. your why is your priority. What's going to make you happy if you do it and miserable if you don't for a couple days. So, but it's not just a present that you would just pay me to spend time with me. It's a present that it's free for you guys for being here. If you sign up by tomorrow night at midnight. Okay. So happy New Year's to you. I hope that's something that's actually made this worthwhile for you guys. I get sick of myself talking. That might sound surprising, but, yeah, I in my head, I'm like, oh, these people, they're not into it. That's my vulnerability here. But, if you have gotten something out of this today, I promise you'll also get something out of this Find Your Why Mastermind January Clarity. So it's also share with family and friends. Again, if they sign up by tomorrow at midnight, it's the same deal. It's free for them, completely free. And then it's $60, which I promise you it goes to a good place because we're not rich and we're trying to help a lot of people behind this mission. So this is not step work. That's why I would, charge for it. Yeah, so that's my deal. And you can also, just go to my website, zachbloom.com/why, and you can sign up there. Okay. You can also scan that QR code, which is such a cool thing. Okay. So now I'm going to stop the share. And, if you got some questions, go ahead and raise your hand. And again, the spotlight's going to stay on me. So you guys will not be on camera. We may hear your voice. You can also put any questions you have or comments into the chat. I'm all ears. Anybody with a softball question? So I guarantee if you have a question to ask, probably somebody else has the same question, but they're not asking it. So be a leader, baby. Oh, okay. What is the best way to support those in recovery? Great question. Because I know there's lots of people here that are also just support. They're not necessarily addicts or alcoholics themselves, but they're supporting loved ones and friends. To be honest, this is a really hard thing. It is. There's this saying in the 12-step rooms, which is, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. My sense is if you even made it to the rooms one time in your life, you have had a miracle happen. Again, the one expectation that an addict alcoholic has, and it's the same thing, by the way, addict and alcoholic it's like saying I'm from Denver and also from Colorado. It's the same exact thing. When you have an addiction, the expectation, the one expectation is that you drink or that you are in that addiction 24/7. If I ever hear from somebody, the percentages of my guys staying sober long term is exceptional. Like it's not normal. It's not what I was doing 3 years ago. It's something about how I'm doing it now. These guys that's why I wanted to give a diagram of it, and I hope I've done that. These guys have hope and they're moving forward. And some of them were the low bottom people, right? And some of them were the high bottom, but it's consistently 6 out of 7 of these guys are doing the deal long term. And those other guys, they're still trying. They're just not sponsoring or fully sober yet. So it's a miracle to even make it into the rooms. And I would just advise as much as you can to plant seeds. There are intervention techniques. If you want more information about that, you can connect with me offline. Just send me a text or something. That's more of a case-by-case scenario. But in general, if you're a loved one, you don't want to enable that person, pleasing versus serving. It would please them greatly for you to go get them alcohol today. And they'll come up with whatever, I lied to the people I care about the most. And then I celebrated that I got away with it. But I didn't get away with it, as it turns out. It was killing me. And so enabling is something we don't want to do in general. I and I guess what I'll say is this: go to Al-Anon. You know, take something from these steps and start applying it within your own life. You know, rewatch this. Just do something like that. I'm going to be putting a lot more stuff out there, but there's a lot of great resources out there about what the 12 steps are. When you are practicing the 12 steps, you will know what to do. Their suffering, I might say, may not it's not like it won't bother you, but you got to live happy, joyous, and free is kind of what the step says. You know, when you're living happy, joyous, and free, that's going to be the best indicator that a good life is possible. And they just need strong examples of that. So tough love, like love 100%, but with some leverage too, to get going in a good direction. It would be my best smack at it. Yeah, I saw Perks. Thank you, Katie. Love you, babe. Perks, got your hand raised, bro. Go for it.
Yeah, yeah. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This is great. Just maybe talk to all of us about, even though we're in recovery or we're looking to help people, that doesn't change the fact that we're imperfect either, and that we need to be working our program ourselves and through all this as well.
Yeah, there's a line near the back of the big book, that we can't transmit something we haven't got. And so, there's like this it's recovering a sense of intimacy. I use this word intimacy. I got to do the work continuously so I have a sense of intimacy and a sense of belonging on this planet, with myself, with God, whatever you want to call it. When I have that sense of intimacy and then I'm living from that and I'm practicing these principles in all my affairs, and I want to have an intimate relationship with my wife and with my finances and with my, communities and my body, and, like I need to have healthy relationships. A lot of the good things are just going to come from working on having healthy, intimate relationships. One way I've heard sponsorship is, or any therapeutic relationship. I've gone to some school for counseling. I thought I was going to be a counselor a few years ago, and they said, um, oh, I lost it. Sorry, maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, sorry, can't remember. As soon as I move on, I'm sure it'll come back to me. Yeah. Thanks, Perks. Anything else on that?
No, I just it's something for me too, and everything that I do is that I have to continually take an inventory of myself, even though I'm in a position of helping other people. And then anybody who's in here that is looking to sponsor and take that step, well, part of your recovery is taking that step to help other people, right? That's the 12th step, and being able to pass that on. But we can never forget that it's not, once you get to that 12th step, it's not over. It's every day. I don't care if you're 6 months into it or you're 30, 40 years into this. If you're not working your own program, you can never help anybody truly.
Yeah, that's right. And that quote came back to me, but they said that we have one therapeutic relationship in your life, and, sponsorship or a therapist or whomever, or just a great friend that you're able to like really tell the truth to, and they're not gonna judge you, but they're also going to, therapeutic means healthy. They're going to be healthy with you, and it's a two-way street. It's therapeutic both ways. They say one therapeutic relationship in your life, it's like a high tide raises all boats. It resets your relational template to a higher level. So, the idea of a sponsor, or a good therapist, a good friend, mentor, is you, I'm a garbage disposal for people. Like, you just the truth has to be told. It doesn't have to all be told to me. I've heard I've heard the most terrible things that you could hear have happened to a person, or a person did something. I've heard, and just in a few short years of doing this work, it's pretty universal, and not just from addicts and people in the recovery community, people just out there in the world, but when they are able to get those things up and out, they start to live for the first time, and so staying in the work, I mean, it brings a new sense of life and a new depth and quality to my life to help somebody else. It's the greatest set of neurochemicals I've ever had. It's to lead somebody through the steps and then to watch them become a leader. To go from, and I'll say there's a moment where Kate asked a question, my sister, about a sponsee sitting on a fourth step. Um, you know, I try to get somebody through a fourth and fifth step in the very first conversation, but we're so close to the other side. But right when we're about to have breakthrough, it's like, that's when there's a bathroom break. That's when, right when I'm about to make the big power move is when all of that stuff that doesn't want me to change starts to show up and keep me from changing. It's a miracle that I made it through my fourth and fifth step. And so now something that I've tried to do is I show them the fourth step on our very first conversation. I send them the link from my website, and please, if you want to use my link, please go for it. And I go through it with them over the phone right there. I kind of do an overview of the steps and get their story and their background. And we do steps 1 through 3 in the first 45 minutes or so. And then we get right into 4 and 5, and we do a full relationship in 4 and 5 in that very first conversation, so that they get a sense of the relief that happens in 5. And so it's like action trumps everything else. Just to stay in action. Just they're with me for a reason, and so for some reason they've never gotten past this precipice. And when you say that to a person, I'll say that usually in my enrollment conversation with them. I'll tell them, I'm going to get you through step 5 with at least one relationship in that first conversation. And I tell you, it's really weird if they don't show up for the first conversation. And I also say, there's no expectation. If I text you the night before and you don't get back to me, I still get to feel good. And if I call you when I say I'm going to call you and you don't answer, I still get to feel good. I'm going to stay sober. I stay sober by trying to help these other people. And I just tell them that right in the first conversation. And so being stuck in an inventory is like, we're always stuck. Yeah. And I totally identify with that. And so I try to help people get through it quicker, because I had a real tough time in my 4 and 5. Yeah. I got a question here from Fam. Best ways to get a family member to their first meeting. A family member was asked to slow down or stop, and she became defensive and threatened to leave. Yeah, that's that's a tough boat to be in. There's other people with long-term sobriety on here, who may feel the want to chime in. Again, my experience, there are these 3 traditions, or 3 legacies, they're called, on the coins, on the AA coins. Actually, I do have one right here. It's our 24-hour chip. And it says, unity, service, recovery. To thine own self be true. So recovery, again, these coincide with the steps, is what I have come to understand about it. Recovery is steps 1 through 9. When you repeat those, that's the step 10. So it's doing the step work, learning how to do the step work, getting a mentor, a sponsor, and going through the work. Unity is the meetings. You show up to the meetings and you get a new sense of, I'm a part of this whole. I have a sense of unity, but also as it reflects within the meetings, you start to have a sense of that with yourself. Like, I belong here, on this planet, perhaps. Maybe you start to contend with the idea of what God is, or what kind of God would put you in this situation. You start to get things up and out and start to talk it out. So there's a sense that there's multiple levels of unity there. And then service is helping the next person, and practicing these principles in all of your affairs. So it's, recovery, unity, service. In successful interventions that I've been a part of or have studied, those 3 elements are there, and they're talked about as, these are the cornerstones of a success. If you're going to have a major change happen, those would be 3 elements that would need to be present. And, if they're defensive about it, to say, is this something, there's many different ways to get there. The 12-step rooms are one place that you can go to a meeting and get recovery, because you're doing step work in a meeting. You're learning about that stuff. Unity, because you're at the meetings are kind of represented in the unity. And then service is being a new person in a meeting, is you are the most important person because everybody else stays sober based on helping you. So we need the new people. So if you go to one meeting, you knock out all three of those actions in one action, those three concepts. And if you do that, they say you're likely to stay sober in that 24-hour period. So to backtrack, it even starts with, is this person able to, make it a 24-hour period? And if they're not, there's different options available. There's intervention. Again, if you connect with me offline, we can talk about different options to move through those things. But sometimes you need some leverage in place, like we're going to remove some, family support if this doesn't happen. Her threatening to leave is kind of going in that direction already. It's nasty, ugly business. But on the other side of it, interventions often do work, although they don't always. They can make things worse, but the status quo is usually pretty screwed already if you're at that point. So making it worse is a matter of degree versus the opportunity to make it better, and there is a decent chance that it would be made better. Yeah. So I like to talk about those three things because you can say, well, look, you can get a therapist and you can go to group. There's a bunch of different types of recovery. Find one that suits you, and service is like, find a place to go do some service and be of some service. If those three principles are acted out on a day-by-day basis, you will likely change your life. And that's coming from a guy who also studied a lot of life coaching paradigms, and there's nothing better than those three things: recovery, unity, service. Great question. Tom, you're unmuted. Are you looking to ask a question?
You know what? I've been approached by a couple of guys, Zach, that know I've got some time, and they're of the, hey, I'm trying to quit for New Year's, and I don't know how to approach. Like, are you having, are you calling yourself alcoholic? Are you quitting for, my first question was like, you quitting for 30 days or 90, or is this something permanent? And they didn't answer. Yeah. So I'm trying to be diligent with how I, approach it. Because again, I want to be helpful, and I don't want to say you need to get your ass in a room right away. If they are, if I can give them some ideas around, maybe they get some time, and then we can have a deeper discussion. So any ideas around that? Other than what you just said, because I know that, would be great too.
Well, and I've seen, I think you catch more flies with honey, I think is the saying. My experience has been to just encourage people where they're at. Like, if somebody is actually saying that out loud to a person like you that they most likely know is a sober person, that's like the part of them that wants to make the big change is sending up a flag. But then but it's also surrounded by a bunch of parts of them that want to stay the same and get the neurochemicals on the cheap and easy. It doesn't live out here in the world where setting goals and achieving them and, having good, healthy relationships is a really wonderful experience and will make all those parts of that person happy and whole and connected. It's a whole different paradigm on the inside there. So I try to not alienate any of those parts of a person as best I can. It's difficult with people that it's one of those things where I almost say, like, it's almost next to impossible to get some. I can't believe that people still show up at meetings. The longer I'm sober, the more disbelief I have about it. But they do. When they're in enough pain, they show up there. They're not sure for a couple of years if they have this problem. And then a couple of years later, it starts becoming apparent that they really do have that. Happy New Year, Perks. Love you, buddy. So I would, as much as you can, I would encourage, like, that's awesome. That's so cool, man. Like, a core value. There's a core value paradigm, like coaching program basically that I take people through, and it's about your core values or your core principles, and what are your hierarchy, what are your priorities with what your principles are. And the healthiest thing I've ever seen on that paradigm, on that breakdown through many iterations, is to put health at number 1 and then love and truth at 2 and 3. And it can be in many different terms. Like, love could be, intimacy, you know, is what I actually use. Truth could be curiosity or intelligence, insight, you know, those types of words. But health. So I love to talk about health, health, health. God, that's awesome. Like, uh, and I'll ask the why question, but Tom's also in a why group right now. Um, the why question won't compute. They won't get a good answer. Like, oh, why would you want to do that? You know, if you can ask, oh, what's the reason you want to do that? You know, what are some reasons that you want to make a change? You know, or I'll ask a what question, but it's tied to the why. If you ask a why question, just so everybody else knows, it goes to the limbic system, which is an older part of the brain that doesn't have language. So if you ask somebody, why are you doing that? And they look at you dumbfounded, it's because that part of it's a caveman that doesn't know how to speak English, you know, and just wants to club you for asking. But yeah, so I'll ask, you know, so what are the reasons? Cool. And that might give them some leverage to put some of their why into words using the what language, will help their neocortex, the language center in the mind, actually define it and help, you know, throw the caveman a bone, so to speak, so they can get some real good leverage. With those reasons are leverage. There's going to be pain in those reasons. There's going to be healthy stuff in the future. You know, that kind of stuff is where I'd go with it. Yeah, encouragement. And yeah, and text is and mostly how we communicate these days is text. You know, and it's such a hard way to communicate. Honestly, it's a miracle if you can ever get on the phone with somebody. That's it's a powerful, you can just move through all of these decisions on a phone call. Whereas a text, you know, if you ask somebody that's like a head scratcher, like, would you be willing to go to a meeting? Would you be willing to go to a 24-hour hold somewhere just to get 24 hours under your belt? And then you can kind of clear your head and make a decision. You know, they're not going to get back to you. Has been my experience.
Yeah.
You know, even non-alcoholics have that problem. Even healthy alcoholics have that problem. You know, so yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the sales analogy too. That's like I mean, that was early on in this presentation, but you don't, hey, I got something for you. And then you never follow up. Right. And so, just being proactive and asking, which is kind of what you just set up. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
I will say, like, back in the day, before the 12 steps were even written, but they had the core concept of drunks helping drunks. The two co-founders had coalesced and created this community together. It wasn't one guy that figured it out. They figured it out by one guy he was sober a couple months, Bill W., and he was out of town and he had a business deal fall through. And he had been helping out at the local alcoholic ward of the hospital, because that's what they used to do with alcoholics, is they had a whole insane asylum full of them, basically. He had been helping out there trying to help keep people sober, and he had been staying sober. That was like the big discovery. So he was in Akron, Ohio, away from his home, and he had this business deal fall through, and he reached out to the local hospitals to try and find an alcoholic to go try to help, because he was getting thirsty after this deal fell through. And he was set up with this guy named Dr. Bob, who became the co-founder. He's called the co-founder because he was like, look, I'm not here to tell you to help you. I'm here because I'm a drunk and I'm going to drink unless I try to help you. And they both, I think Dr. Bob had one slip after that, but basically they stayed sober ever since. And then they started this whole, thing up. So it's about when you try to help somebody else, that's where this thing is made. And in the early days, it was, people heard a doctor from Ohio had the cure to alcoholism, and they'd show up on his front porch, from miles around, and he would take them through. They had a 6-step program at the time that was called the Oxford groups. And he would take them through the 6 steps and then send them packing. And, a week later, a lot of these guys were shaking because they were such bad drunks. There was not a cure for alcohol. There was not a real good treatment for alcoholism. So they'd have the shakes. So Dr. Bob would be taking notes. He would be writing their inventory. He would be facilitating them. So that's kind of the sales analogy. It has worked wonders for me. I want the good feelings. So if I want the sale to happen, and so far these guys are They're sponsoring other people and they're staying sober and they're having vital spiritual experiences. By the way, that to me is the point, but it happens when you're giving it away. So it has to be about, thinking about, I got to show up to sponsor. I'm going to, if you're interested in sponsoring somebody else, like come see me, and so many of us are retreads as well. I will say, not to bag on this point, but, when so many of us have been through the rooms and just never got through a 4 and 5 or never did our amends, or whatever, there's a million things that take us out. And I just try to sit with them and get them through as quickly as I can. And I tell them, I'm going to talk to you one day a week. And I guess here's one other piece of it is, I go, look, I have a lot of people that I sponsor. This is how I participate in the service element. You need to go get 10th step people. If you call me at night, I'm likely not going to answer. I have my phone off. Like I'm with my kids and family. I have a crazy freaking life. To your point earlier, Tom, like, I have a totally imperfect life. I have all these things that I'm chasing down. So go to go to regular meetings in between our conversations, go to one every day is the suggested action, meditate for 10 minutes in the morning, do a 3rd step-ish prayer every morning, either word by word or your own made up version of it. And get phone numbers at every meeting that you go to. Stay after the meeting and get newer people's phone numbers and the older people, the people with more sobriety whose shares you really liked. Get their phone numbers. The idea is you use a couple of them so that, when you run into those bad days, you've already used them on good days. So it's second nature. Because again, I'm not going to be the guy to do that. And I even will say sometimes they already have a sponsor or something, and I'll say, well, look, I'm like a step work guy. I'll just get you through the steps and understand the spirit of each step, the principle behind the step, so you can have some fun with this thing. So you're sitting in meetings and they mention a 7 step, you know what that is. You have an experience with it. You have something to offer and you have something to receive more. You have more capacity to receive. So anyway, tangent over. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. We could go on forever. So yeah, we are over time here, folks. So is there anything else? Thanks for all the hearts, Bean. Is there anything else that anybody else would like to ask? Encouraging family members to get in meetings. Always a good encouragement. Never. They're going to take it as judgment. Probably, it's the nature of family. We feel judged the closer a person is to us, even if it's some third party network. Once we know somebody, it's like my friend's girlfriend, and now we both know that we have this problem. Most people try to avoid us, after that has been my experience. But not ramming it down anybody's throat, but just letting pain naturally create leverage in their life and reducing, if you can, if there's any way that you can reduce the amount of anesthetizing of that pain, or just calling out what that pain is, oh yeah, you're struggling in these areas, yeah, that's kind of the best advice if you're family members. And also, please reach out. Yeah. And I'll hop on the phone directly. There's also such a thing as a 12-step call, which is where back in the day, this is how sponsorship kind of started. The family with the alcoholic would or the addict would call the local meeting or whatever, and they'd get a couple members to come, 12-step the guy and tell their story, talk drunk to the guy and be like, hey, yeah, I drank just like you. And now, I'm feeling good, or, I've got a good life. And, that can be helpful. It can plant a seed. It usually, that stage is the ugliest thing. If they get to a meeting, that's their best chance, even if they're highly opposed to it. I was highly opposed to it. I was never going to go. I'm like 3rd generation AA. I'm too smart to have the 3rd generation in a row happen to me, and I've seen people that I've experienced a lot of people that were too smart to get it, but I've never met somebody that was too dumb to get it, and I'm too smart. So I'm a real miracle. Cause my brain tells me that I'm too smart. It's not that I am too smart. My ego tells me that that's why I'm different and nobody could ever understand me. That's my persona that only gets praise and never love, So, yeah. Well, now I'm just rambling. Okay, so you guys must love me if you're just hanging on. So I want to end this thing. Unless there's another question firing off at the buzzer here. Happy New Year,
I was
y'all.
gonna say, I got to run. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you,
Yeah.
Zach.
Love you
Appreciate
guys. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Awesome to spend some time with you today.
Yep, appreciate you.
Love you, Zachy.
Thank
Love
you,
you.
guys.
Bye, Kate.
Happy
See
New
you
Year.
guys.
Love you guys.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Take care, guys.